Hello, my name is Attorney James Wade. I am the owner of Beacon Tax Advocates. And if you are watching this video, it's because you've signed up for our initial consultation call. And what I wanted to do was go over the basics of dealing with the IRS. Because during our consultation call, there just isn't going to be time to go over all of this information that you really want to know. I think for many of you, a lot of the reason why you're calling is you just don't understand the process and are looking for some help. Now, you can use this information whether you hire us or not, but hopefully once we're done our consultation call, you'll seriously consider having us help you out with this. So let's start what we're going to discuss. Just real briefly, how do you find yourself in this situation? Then we'll go on to what does the IRS do to collect taxes? I think for many people, this is the area you really want to keep in mind as to why you want to get off sort of this treadmill of either accruing new liabilities or just not dealing with it because of all the nasty things the IRS can do to you. Which naturally leads into, all right, well, how do I get the IRS off my behind? What are my options? Talk a little bit about the financial analysis that goes into discussing your options, and then kind of go briefly over the initial consultation call and how it fits into all this information I'm asking you about, and then what to do next. Because once the consultation call is over with, there are things you need to do, whether you hire us or not. And I'm just going to briefly go over that to set you up for success. All right, so let's get started. So often when people call me, we spend a couple of minutes where they sort of lay out everything that happened, tell me all about the horror story that created their problem. And oftentimes they're telling me about how awful they feel, the shame, the embarrassment, it's all my fault, I should have dealt with this earlier. And I just want to state up front, you're not a bad person because you have a tax problem. You're a good person who found himself in a bad situation. And for many of you, there is something that caused this. You didn't just wake up this morning and decide, I just don't want to pay the IRS. I don't want to file my returns. Screw them, screw everybody. I hate everything. No one's ever said that to me. Generally, something has happened. A death in the family. Maybe you have medical problems. You got a disease. You become disabled. Just bad things happening to you. A natural disaster. Oh, I lost all my records in a flood or in a fire. And on and on and on. There's just so many different ways that people can find themselves in this problem. But I think for many of you, one of the reasons you're still in this problem is because you don't really know the process. I think I don't know how many people have come to me where we could have solved their problem years ago had they understood what they needed to do. They just have been living with it. I don't want to say you've been sticking your head in the sand like an ostrich, but for many of you, either the IRS is sort of not saying anything, or maybe they're not responding, and so they aren't doing anything until now. Suddenly they're rushing at you with all these letters, demands, threats, and you've been dealing with other things in your life, paying the bills, raising the kids, keeping the business afloat, etc. So just understand, it's not your fault that you found yourself in this situation. It is your fault if you let it continue after you're done listening to everything I've got to say. So pay attention. There are ways to get this resolved once and for all. All right. So what can the IRS do to you to make you work something out with them? Now, for most of you, you may just get notices and more notices and then more notices. They flood you with notices. Oftentimes, you don't really understand what they're saying. Sometimes what they're saying is contradictory, and on and on and on. But that's sort of the initial stages. That sends you notices. And then they can assess you penalties. You file late, you pay late, you start noticing that the IRS is tacking on penalties and interest to encourage you to deal with it now. Then, if something doesn't happen, they may file what they call a tax lien. A lien is essentially a claim against your property, all your property. It isn't just real estate, it's everything, whether it be something substantial like a car or something insubstantial like money you notionally have in a bank account. They can come after everything. But a lien is filed against you to let the world know, hey, this person owes the IRS. And the states can also do something similar to that, but we'll stick with the IRS because it just makes things a little bit easier to describe. Now, the IRS can, either at the same time, before or after the lien, they can do what they call a levy. A levy is just a very fancy way of saying they're going to take your stuff, garnish your wages, take money in your bank account. They could seize money that's owed to you by customers, clients, or patients. In some cases, extreme cases, but in some cases they can seek to foreclose on your primary residence or other real estate. So a levy is serious business. And typically, if you're sort of ignoring the IRS or you're just not responding, the IRS will seek to garnish wages or seek money in your bank account. And again, state can do that too. Things start getting more serious, however, if in spite of all these things, you still don't respond and you owe a substantial sum of money, they can assign an actual field agent. Normally you're dealing with someone working at a call center for the IRS in several locations across the United States. They can actually, however, go to the state. Let's just use Maine because that's where I am. And there are a number of what they call revenue officers in that state. And they can say, hey, we want you to go and talk to this person and find out why they aren't paying us. That's when things get more serious, because now, let's just use J.R.R. Tolkien's book, Lord of the Rings, the Eye of Sauron is on you. They're watching you. They're trying to see why you haven't paid and then seek to collect what they can from you. This can get real serious, because if you don't respond to that, they can make your life very miserable. Now, the last three things, these are sort of where things get very serious. It's rare, but you have to be aware that if you still refuse after all of that, they can maybe criminally prosecute you. Or they can do what they call a suit to reduce your liability to a judgment, at which point then they can foreclose on your property, whether it be a prior residence or other real estate, maybe even other property. Serious stuff there. So normally we try to get you taken care of before it gets that serious. But these are all the nasty things the IRS can do. So let's talk about, hey, how do I avoid all this nastiness? Well, you can see right there, there's a list of everything you can do. I put offers in compromise first. That's the legal settlement program you hear about all the time on the radio and TV. As a matter of fact, I've got a special slide for that because this comes up so frequently. But you can either settle it, you can work out a payment plan, depending on your finances, maybe you can work out what they call hardship status, which the IRS calls currently non-collectible. You may be able to get penalties abated or file for bankruptcy. Sometimes, and this is the last one, you could potentially just outlast the IRS tax debt. That's rare, but it's there. So be aware of all your options. But let's focus a little bit on offers in compromise, because I know you're thinking to yourself, is there a way to get this resolved now? For many people, however, you're going to be in a payment plan or hardship status. But for some of you, you may qualify to settle it. Just be aware, it's not as easy as they make it sound in those ads. It is very mathematical. So a simple example, if I owe $10,000, but I have $100,000 in cash in my bank account, you are not going to settle with the IRS. Think about it for a moment. If someone owes you money and they can fully pay it, would you accept anything less? Well, the IRS isn't any different. So don't come in thinking, all right, I'm going to talk to Attorney Wade, figure out if I can't settle this for pennies in the dollar, without at least considering what your financial situation is. And for many of you, if you've got real estate in Maine, for many of you, you've got substantial equity due to the increase in real estate prices during COVID. That may make it very hard to get an offer. But putting that aside for a moment, just understand, those TV and radio ads have misled you to make it sound easier than it is. It's actually a very involved process. It can take a long time, and you're probably going to end up offering more than you think you would like to. And let's put a little asterisk here. The IRS has full discretion to deny an offer that you make, regardless of whether they should accept it or not. They have full discretion. They can just say, I don't like you, no. Rare, but they can do it. So there's no guarantees, even if you otherwise qualify, that you're going to get it. You also have to keep in mind that once it's accepted, if everything works great, the offer is accepted, for the next 5 years, you have got to file on time, pay every dime that you owe on time. No exceptions. If at any time during that 5 years you make a mistake and end up owing more money, you got a small window to correct it. Otherwise, everything that was forgiven comes right back into existence, and now you're in a worse spot. So, for many of you, if you're like self-employed and you can't sort of keep up with your taxes, an offer is going to be tricky. You don't want to go through all of the motions, all the cost, all the time and effort to get an offer accepted, and then just blow it up. Okay, so with that, just because you may not qualify for an offer, that doesn't mean you have to suffer. There are other things that can be done to fix your case. Penalty abatement is one, where, hey, if I'm going to have to full pay, maybe there's an opportunity there to reduce what you owe. Or maybe there's going to be a situation where you can never full pay, but let's say you have assets that make an offer unrealistic. You might be able to still work out something with the IRS where you pay what you can afford to pay, and at the end of that statute of limitations for collections, which is generally 10 years from the date of assessment of a tax year, whatever is not paid can be forgiven. So there are other things out there if an offer doesn't work. So don't sort of get like those blinders on like a horse and only focus on the offer. Just because you can't qualify for an offer doesn't mean you don't qualify for other opportunities to reduce what you owe. All right, so let's talk about financial analysis, because I know when you listen to the video on the initial consultation, I said, hey, I want you to sit down using the handout I provided to kind of rough out some numbers on your case so that we can figure out what your options are. Well, this is the reason why, because for many of you out there, a lot turns on what are your assets, income, and expenses. So when you look at the list there, you'll see ability to pay is key. The IRS is going to consider your financial situation when considering what's best for them. As far as, hey, is this going to be a monthly payment plan? Okay, well, how much? And I want to add in there a little asterisk, because for some of you, you're spending probably more than you're earning, or close to it. And you think to yourself, okay, I can't afford to pay anything to the IRS. What you're going to find out, much to your dismay, is that the IRS actually has rules which reduce or restrict expenses that you're paying for. A common example is, I'm paying for my kids' college education. Guess what? The IRS does not allow that as part of considering what your ability to pay is. Doesn't mean you don't, they're going to tell you to stop paying for your kids' college education. It just means you're not going to get any credit for it when figuring out what your monthly amount that needs to be paid to them. Now, there's some opportunity to negotiate with the IRS around the edges, but this one, they don't bend on. If you're not paying for your own college and you need it for a job, they're just not going to consider it. Where we do find some flexibility is housing utilities. The amount that they say that someone should be spending if you're in Cumberland County, Maine, which is very expensive, it's going to easily cost you $3,000 to $4,000 a month for housing utilities. The IRS for one person has it somewhere around $2,000. That is, I don't know where they're thinking you're going to rent a space in Cumberland County, but that's really low. You'd be renting someone's closet, I think, for that amount of money. But that's what the IRS does, and they have discretion here, meaning I can't tell them, well, you've got to accept this. What we have to do is we have to work with them and negotiate something less than they sort of negotiate down the monthly payment amount they're considering. Just keep that in mind. All right, so now let's talk about our meeting. The whole idea is to get information on what brought you to this point so that I know, okay, here's a rough idea what the problem is and what might need to be done. Then we're going to look at your financial situation. Hey, what are your assets? What are your income and expenses? Are you someone who's going to qualify for an offer, or are you someone who's probably going to have to consider a payment plan or hardship status? Maybe you could get bankruptcy, but that's something that probably would take some more research to find out. But we'll go over your options. Once we're done, I'm going to tell you one or two things. One, I can help you, and then I'll make an offer as to how we should proceed. Or two, I can't help you and refer you out. if I can all do that. Some people have cases that there's no easy referral to, but I'm going to do my best. Now, if I do think I can help you, we're either going to say, look, you got a little bit of time. I think the best way to proceed is to do an investigation. I'm not representing you, sort of before the IRS or state. It's more of, okay, let's get your IRS information and let's consider what your options are. And I'll get more, sort of detailed documentation from you to firm up the numbers. Because during the consultation, everything is going to be very much an estimate. So everything is going to be ballpark. We're really not going to know what's the best way to proceed based on the consultation call, but we'll have some ideas. The investigation is designed to get us closer to what is 100% accurate, at least as far as where we stand. The IRS can always challenge it, but we're going to at least come up with this is what we think is the answer, as far as this is the way to proceed. Now, an investigation, usually there's a flat fee, at which point, once we're done, if you hire us to do the resolution work, meaning negotiate with the IRS or state, you will get a credit for the amount that you paid us for the investigation, because we have to do the investigation no matter what. So if going to the second thing we could do, which is your case is so far gone, meaning we don't have an opportunity for breathing room, the IRS is threatening immediate aggressive collection action, or the state, we have to get on your case today. At that point, we'll just go, okay, look, pay this much, down initial, and then this much per month until we get it resolved. I don't like that as much because I can't get a better idea of what's going to need to be done so I can keep it reasonable as far as the fees that have to be charged. If we sort of have to jump on immediately, there's a lot of question marks. I have to charge a larger fee to cover contingencies. Now, on the sort of resolution work, again, we do charge flat fees if we can. Some cases require we ask for money in trust and then bill against it, but generally we're trying to do this flat fee so that you know every month what you've got to pay. So let me summarize that again, because I said a lot. If I can help you, we'll either do an investigation where we're not representing you before the IRS or state, but what we're doing is hopefully within 2 to 4 weeks, getting you some more definitive answers about your case and what needs to be done and estimate what it's going to cost. And if you decide to hire us, we'll credit you toward the fee towards the amount of work that's going to have to be done. If, however, your case is such where we got to get on it immediately, generally speaking, we're going to ask for an initial fee to get started and then a monthly fee paid each month until we get the matter resolved. Because unfortunately, once we get on a case where we have to immediately represent you, we have no idea what needs to be done or how long it's going to take. So we're going to kind of cover our bases with that flat fee paid monthly until it's done. So with that, we've gone over sort of how to deal with the IRS as far as what they can do to you now if you don't work with them, what your options are, and a little bit about offers and compromise. We've also talked about here's sort of some outlines of the financial analysis we have to do, and then what's going to happen during the meeting. Now, if we go through this meeting, you decide not to hire us, I want to at least leave you with this information here because this is very important. A lot of people don't understand there's a bunch of stuff that you need to do. It's not just all on the attorney or the CPA or the enrolled agent who's working your case. There's some stuff that you're going to have to deal with. First, if you have any unfiled returns, you're going to need to get an accountant or a tax preparer to get those returns prepared. Whenever you're trying to work something out with the IRS, if there's unfiled returns, they're generally speaking going to say no deal until those returns are filed. If you're a business owner and you're not making estimated tax payments, you're going to have to. They're just not going to set up an agreement with you until you do. Now, if we're doing an offer and compromise and you're not paying your estimates, they're just going to say nope, no deal, and kick you right out. And so all the money you spent on that offer is going to be wasted. So if you're a business owner, you're not making estimated tax payments, you need to get on that. If you don't know what that is, look at what I said first. Get an accountant. They're going to tell you. We can assist you with figuring out estimates, but really we prefer that you talk to your accountant and sort of work something out as far as figuring out what your income and expenses are for the biz so you can have as accurate an estimate as possible on what you're going to have to pay quarterly. If your books are in terrible shape, you're going to need a bookkeeper. There is nothing more frustrating than not knowing where you stand financially, because either we're going to underestimate what you could pay each month, and the IRS is going to pick up on that, or we're going to overestimate and you're going to pay more than you need to, which is going to seriously impact your cash flow, whether it be for the business or for personal. So get a bookkeeper. They are not that expensive. And honestly, if you have a long-term vision for your business and you don't have a bookkeeper, you really shouldn't be in business. I'm going to come out and say it. Get a bookkeeper, because you're going to need somebody to figure out the books so that you can focus on making a profitable business. It's like an old saying, the quarterback during the football game is not handing out Gatorade. He should be focused, generally it's a he should be focused on playing the best game possible, thinking strategically. If you're doing the bookkeeping on top of all the other strategic planning, you are really not doing yourself any favors, and you're going to make your business, it's just not going to be successful, or as successful as it could be. If you have assets, so for example, I have a rental property and it's owned free and clear. If you owe money to the IRS, you're going to have to seriously consider whether you're going to have to sell or borrow against that property. The IRS, generally as a default, is going to be considering tapping into equity in property. And you can say all you want about, well, I need it for this, I need it for that. Doesn't matter. You're going to have to consider it. It is some tough love I got to give out right now. For many people, they want to sort of work out something with the IRS where they don't have to suffer any ill consequences. Unfortunately, you're going to have to make some tough decisions, and you're going to have to look into either borrowing or selling assets. Looking at your household budget next. Similar to what I said previously, you're going to have to make some hard decisions. Look at what you're spending. If you are spending a lot of money on stuff like eating out, you're going to have to cut back. If your kids, you're paying for their college or their cars while they're in college, you're going to have to consider if you're going to need them to start working a job, or if you're going to have to go and talk to the college or the university about financial aid, because you're just not going to be able to do it anymore. Or if you do, you're going to have to make cuts elsewhere to be able to afford it. But some tough decisions need to be made. I'm going to be very blunt. If you are somebody who wants to sit there and complain about the budget and how you can't cut into anything, and I can't do it, I can't do this, I can't do that, you are very quickly going to find yourself not a client. I can't, this is one of my pet peeves. Deal with it. You have some choices, you got to make them. Something has to get cut. Trust me, 6 months to a year from now, once you've got something worked out with the IRS and you're slowly working towards a resolution of it completely, you're going to feel so much better. And for the bad decisions you made previously, they're all going to be washed away by how you're never going to have to worry about this problem again, unless you do something like accrue new tax liability. So, definitely don't do that. Finally, if nothing else, start making voluntary payments to the government. You can do that. Too often, when we're dealing with situations like this, people think, well, because the IRS hasn't contacted me, or because I wasn't able to work something out as far as a payment plan, I can just sit there and do nothing, and it's the government's fault. No, it's on you largely to do something about it. If something formal hasn't been working out, that doesn't mean you can't pitch whatever you can afford to pay now to pay down what you owe. Because for many of you, you're going to be what they call a full pay, meaning you're not going to be able to settle it. So the best thing you can do, just like a mortgage, is reduce the principal, meaning the taxes, as much as possible. So making these voluntary payments, even if you don't work something out formally with the government, is going to help you. And it looks good to the IRS when you're trying to work something out. It shows that you're a compliant taxpayer, that you're trying to do what's right. And when we have to look at penalty abatement, they're going to look more favorably. Because if you just sit there and do nothing and just let it sort of get worse and worse and worse, they're not going to be inclined to help you out. Whereas if you're like, okay, maybe I can't take care of it all today, but I'm making payments that I can afford to make, I'm slowly working the balance down, they're going to be more reasonable about abating penalties. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I hope you found some helpful information here. And I look forward to speaking with you soon during our initial consultation call. If, however, you didn't watch it before and you're watching it later, I still hope you found something useful here. So with that, best of wishes and good luck.